They told me I was confused when I asked about the missing money from my checking account. They said I probably just forgot where I put the statements when I questioned the bank notices. They patted my hand like I was a child when I mentioned the strange phone calls from lawyers I would never hired. But when I opened my laptop that Tuesday morning and saw the assisted living facility applications filled out in my daughter's handwriting, with my forged signature at the bottom, I realized I wasn't confused at all. I was being erased, and they had no idea who they were trying to erase. Before we dive in, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss stories like this one. And let me know in the comments where you are watching from. I love hearing from all of you. My name is Margaret Sullivan, but everyone calls me Maggie. I am 67 years old, a widow of 4 years, and according to my 2 adult children, I am a befuddled old woman who can barely operate a smartphone, let alone manage my own finances. That is what they tell their friends. Anyway, that is what they told the social worker who showed up at my door last month asking about my cognitive wellness. What they don't know is that I have been listening to every whispered conversation, reading every document they thought I was too addled to understand, and watching them tear apart the life I built piece by piece while smiling to my face and calling it love. The first sign something was wrong came 6 months ago when my daughter Sarah started visiting more often. Not the kind of visits where we would chat over coffee or she would help with errands, the kind where she would show up unannounced, walk through my house with a notepad, taking pictures of rooms with her phone, and asking pointed questions about my daily routine. "Mom, are you remembering to take your blood pressure medication?" she would ask, even though my blood pressure is perfectly normal and I am not on any medication. "Are you still driving at night? Because Dad always said he worried about your night vision." My husband never said any such thing, but correcting her only earned me that patronizing smile that said I was misremembering again. Then came the technology interventions. My son Michael, who works in finance downtown, started dropping by with helpful apps for my phone and tablet. "This will make it easier for you to manage your banking, Mom," he would say, installing programs that somehow required his fingerprint access for security purposes. When I asked why he needed access to my accounts, he laughed. "Just in case something happens to you, we want to make sure your bills get paid." I let him install everything. I nodded and smiled and played the part of the grateful mother whose capable children were looking out for her welfare. But I also started keeping my real financial information somewhere they couldn't find it, and I began watching them much more carefully than they were watching me. The house visits became more invasive. Sarah would comment on the clutter in my perfectly organized home office, suggesting maybe I didn't need to keep so many papers around. "Most of this stuff is probably outdated anyway, Mom." The truth was, I reviewed my investments every morning with my coffee, but I just smiled and said maybe she was right. Michael started talking about property taxes and maintenance costs, wondering aloud if the house wasn't becoming too much for me to handle. "These old homes are money pits, Mom." My heating bill was actually manageable because I would invest it in energy-efficient upgrades. But again, I played along. Then they started tag-teaming me with stories about their friends' parents who were so much happier after moving to senior communities. Sarah would bring brochures for Sunset Manor, a facility 2 towns over. "Look at all the activities, Mom. You wouldn't have to worry about cooking or cleaning." When I mentioned that I enjoyed cooking and cleaning kept me active, Michael jumped in with safety concerns. "What if you fell in the shower? What if you forgot to turn off the stove?" The irony wasn't lost on me that I felt least secure when they were around, asking questions designed to make me doubt my own competence. The breaking point should have been the day I found the assisted living applications. I was looking for my insurance cards in the desk drawer where I always kept them. And there they were, 5 different applications, all filled out in Sarah's handwriting, all with signatures that looked like mine but weren't. Each application listed different reasons for placement, from mild cognitive decline to inability to manage finances independently to safety concerns due to living alone. But I didn't confront them then. Instead, I pretended I hadn't seen them, and started paying closer attention to what else they might be planning. The answer came when I overheard a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. I would gone upstairs for my reading glasses when Michael's voice drifted up from below. He was speaking quietly, but not quietly enough. "No, she doesn't suspect anything," he was saying. "Sarah's been setting it up perfectly. The applications are ready. We just need one more incident to make it official." A pause. Maybe a missed doctor's appointment, or expired food in her fridge. Something that shows she is not managing well. My blood went cold. "They were manufacturing evidence," he continued. "Once she is placed, we can get power of attorney and start dealing with the house. The realtor thinks we can get at least $450 for it." Another pause. "Split it. Of course, 50-50 after expenses. She will never know the difference." I stood at the top of the stairs, gripping the banister. They weren't just planning to take my independence. They were planning to steal my home and assets by convincing everyone I was too mentally compromised to stop them. That night, I sat in my home office and opened the file cabinet they thought was full of outdated papers. Inside were 43 years of carefully organized financial records, including documentation of the investment portfolio I would been building since my husband died. The portfolio they knew nothing about because I would used my maiden name and a separate address. I also pulled out contact information for Janet Morrison, the estate planning attorney who had helped me set up my affairs after my husband's death. Janet had warned me about family conflicts and helped me put protections in place. Protections my children had no idea existed. But I wasn't ready to make that call yet. First, I wanted to see exactly how far they were willing to go. The answer came when I received a call claiming to be from my doctor's office. "Mrs. Sullivan, you missed your appointment yesterday for your cognitive assessment. Dr. Peterson is concerned and would like to reschedule." I would never scheduled any such appointment. When I called my actual doctor's office, they confirmed no appointment had been made, but they said someone had called about setting up a routine cognitive screening and had been told they needed written authorization from me. I checked my purse for my healthcare directive papers. They were gone. So were my insurance cards and Medicare information. Everything I would looked for in that desk drawer had vanished. That evening, Sarah showed up with takeout Chinese food and a concerned expression. "Mom, I am worried about you. Your doctor's office called and said you missed an important appointment." I looked at her, my own daughter, lying to my face with such ease. "I don't remember scheduling any appointment," I said truthfully. "Oh, Mom," she sighed. "That is exactly what Dr. Peterson was worried about. Memory issues can sneak up on people. Maybe it is time we started helping you keep track of these things." "Maybe," I agreed, watching her relax as she thought she would successfully planted another seed of doubt. Over dinner, she brought up simplifying my life again. "Michael and I think it might be time to make some changes. Nothing dramatic, just little things that would make day-to-day life easier." "What kind of changes?" I asked. "Well, maybe we could help you organize your paperwork. I noticed your office is getting cluttered, and it might be hard to find important documents." She gestured toward the room where she would clearly been searching for asset information. "And maybe automatic bill pay for utilities so you don't have to worry about due dates." "That is thoughtful," I said. "But I have been managing my bills just fine." "I know you have, Mom, but prevention is better than crisis management, right? We just want to make sure you are protected." She patted my hand. "You have taken care of everyone else your whole life. Now let us take care of you." The manipulation was so smooth, so perfectly calibrated to make me feel grateful instead of suspicious, that I almost admired it. Almost after she left, I called Janet Morrison from my bedroom phone. When I explained the situation, she was quiet for a long moment. "Maggie," she said finally, "this is exactly what we discussed when we set up your protections. Are you ready to activate them?" "Not yet," I said. "I want to document everything first. I want to know exactly what they are planning." "Be careful," Janet warned. "If they are forging documents and making false medical claims, they will not stop just because you catch them. They will escalate." She was right. They escalated the very next day. I was grocery shopping when my phone rang. It was Michael, sounding panicked. "Mom, where are you? I am at your house and you are not here." I was worried something had happened. "I am at the grocery store," I said, confused. "I shop every Wednesday at the same time. I have been doing it for years." Oh, he sounded almost disappointed. "Well, when you get home, we need to talk. Sarah and I have been discussing your situation, and we think it is time to make some serious decisions." When I got home 20 minutes later, both children were waiting in my living room with a woman I didn't recognize. She was middle-aged, professionally dressed, carrying a briefcase. "Mom, this is Linda Chen from Sunset Manor," Sarah said, standing. "We asked her to explain some options available to you." I set my grocery bags down slowly. They would ambush me with a nursing home sales pitch in my own living room, without my consent. "I didn't realize we were having a meeting," I said carefully. "It is not a meeting." "Exactly," Michael said. "We just thought it would be helpful for you to hear about the services available. For future planning." Linda Chen stepped forward with a warm, practiced smile. "Mrs. Sullivan, your children are clearly devoted to your well-being. They have shared some concerns about your recent changes in routine and your ability to manage household tasks independently." "What changes in routine?" I asked, looking directly at Sarah. "Well, like missing your doctor's appointment," Sarah said smoothly. "And Michael mentioned that you seemed confused when he was helping you with your phone apps." I felt the trap closing around me. Every interaction they would had with me was being reframed as evidence of decline. Every normal human moment of confusion or forgetfulness was being weaponized to build their case. "Mrs. Sullivan," Linda continued, "Sunset Manor offers a full continuum of care, from independent living apartments to assisted living suites to memory care units. We find that families are much more comfortable when they know their loved one is in a secure environment, with 24-hour support available." "Memory care?" I repeated. "Just as a precaution," Michael said quickly. "We are not saying you need that level of care now, but it is good to know it is available if things change." I looked around my living room, at my children sitting on the furniture I would chosen, in the house I would maintained, discussing my future like I wasn't capable of participating in the conversation, and I realized that this was their end game. They weren't just planning to take my house and my money. They were planning to have me declared incompetent so they could take everything without any legal complications. "This is very informative," I said finally, "but I am not ready to make any decisions today." Linda Chen nodded understandingly. "Of course not. These are big life changes, but I do want to mention that we have a waiting list for our best units. So if you decide you are interested, it is better not to wait too long." After she left, Sarah and Michael lingered, and I could feel them working up to something. "Mom," Sarah began, "we need to talk about some practical things, like your finances. What about them?" "Well, Michael noticed some irregularities when he was helping you with those banking apps. Some transactions that didn't make sense, some accounts that seemed to be dormant. We are worried you might be vulnerable to scams or fraud." This was news to me, since Michael had only installed apps connected to my checking account, which I kept with minimal funds for exactly this reason. But I played along. "What kind of irregularities?" Michael pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of my banking app. "See these transfers? You moved money to some account I don't recognize, and there are fees here that seem excessive. I think someone might be taking advantage of you." I looked at the screen. The transfers he was referring to were routine movements from my checking account to my savings account, something I did monthly to keep my checking balance low. The fees were standard monthly charges that had been the same for years, but presented on a small phone screen, without context, they could easily be made to look suspicious to someone who didn't understand my financial routine. "Maybe I should take a closer look at all your accounts," Michael suggested, "just to make sure everything is on the up and up. I could even help you consolidate things, make them easier to manage." "That is not necessary," I said. "Mom, please," Sarah interjected. "We are not trying to take over your life. We are trying to protect you. You are 67 years old. You live alone, and you are managing a lot of complicated financial stuff that even younger people struggle with. There is no shame in accepting help." I nodded and told them I would think about it, and they finally left. But as soon as their car pulled out of my driveway, I went to my computer and logged into my real investment accounts, the ones they knew nothing about. Everything was exactly as it should be. My portfolio was performing well. My assets were secure, and my automatic transfers and payments were running smoothly. Then I opened a new browser window and did something I probably should have done weeks ago. I started researching elder financial abuse and the legal remedies available to victims. What I found was sobering. According to the FBI, older Americans lose more than $3 billion annually to financial scams, and much of that abuse comes from family members. I read case study after case study of children who had systematically isolated and impoverished their parents, using exactly the tactics my own children were employing. But I also read about successful prosecutions and civil recoveries. And I learned that many states have specific laws protecting elderly people from financial exploitation, with both criminal penalties and civil remedies available. I was still reading when my phone rang. It was Janet Morrison. "Maggie, I have been thinking about our conversation, and I want to run something by you. Have your children asked for access to any accounts or documents beyond what you mentioned?" I told her about the banking apps, the missing insurance cards, and the forged assisted living applications. "That is identity theft and fraud," she said bluntly. "And if they are trying to have you declared incompetent based on false medical information, that is elder abuse. You need to document everything and consider filing charges." "I am not ready to have my children arrested," I said. "Then let's start with civil remedies," Janet replied. "But first, we need to protect your assets before they can do any more damage." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the look on Linda Chen's face when she talked about memory care units, and the casual way Sarah had discussed my changes in routine, like my forgetfulness was an established fact, rather than a lie she was telling. But more than that, I kept thinking about my late husband, Robert, and what he would say if he knew his children were treating me this way. Robert had worked 2 jobs for 30 years to provide for our family. He would scrimped and saved so we could buy this house, so we could send Michael and Sarah to college without debt, so we could have security in our retirement. And now those same children were trying to take it all away by convincing the world that I was too addled to deserve it. The next morning, I made a decision. I called Janet Morrison and told her I was ready to fight back. "Good," she said. "Come in this afternoon, and we will start documenting everything. And Maggie, bring any financial records you have that your children haven't seen. We are going to need to show that you are completely competent to manage your affairs." "Oh, I can do that," I said, thinking about the portfolio they didn't know existed. "I can definitely do that." That afternoon, I sat in Janet's office and laid out 40 years of meticulous financial records. I showed her my investment statements, my tax returns, my estate planning documents, and the detailed spreadsheets I used to track my monthly budgets and expenditures. Janet reviewed everything with growing amazement. "Maggie, you are not just competent. You are financially sophisticated. Your asset allocation is excellent. Your diversification is smart, and your record keeping is better than most professional investors I work with." "I know," I said, "but my children think I cannot balance a checkbook because they want to think that," Janet replied. "It makes what they are doing feel justified. If you are really declining, then they are helping. If you are actually fine, then they are stealing." She pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. "Here is what we are going to do. First, we are going to set up a forensic accountant to review all your accounts and document any unauthorized access. Second, we are going to file a police report about the forged documents. Third, we are going to send your children a cease and desist letter regarding any further attempts to interfere with your financial or medical affairs." "Will that stop them?" I asked. "Maybe," Janet said. But probably not. If they are this far along in their planning, they are likely to escalate before they back down. So we need to be prepared for that. She was right. They escalated that very evening. I was watching the news when my doorbell rang. It was Sarah, and she was crying. "Mom, I am so sorry to bother you, but something terrible has happened." She brushed past me into the living room, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "I got a call from your bank today. They said there has been some suspicious activity on your account." I sat down across from her, waiting to hear what lie she would constructed this time. "They said someone tried to access your account online using incorrect passwords, and they are concerned that you might be a target for identity theft." She looked up at me with genuine seeming concern. "Have you given your banking information to anyone? Any telemarketers or people claiming to be from official agencies?" I hadn't. And she knew it, because the suspicious activity was probably her or Michael trying to access accounts they didn't have passwords for. "I don't think so," I said. "Well, the bank wants to see you first thing tomorrow morning to verify your identity and reset all your security information. They said it is really important that you come in as soon as possible." She handed me a piece of paper with an address and time written on it. "I can drive you if you want. You shouldn't have to deal with this alone." I looked at the paper. The address wasn't for my bank. It was for a different bank entirely, one I would never done business with. "This isn't my bank," I said. Sarah glanced at the paper and frowned. "Oh, that is weird. Maybe they are having you meet at a different branch for security reasons. Or maybe I wrote it down wrong." I was pretty upset when they called. I nodded and told her I would handle it myself, but I could see the frustration flash across her face when she realized she wouldn't be accompanying me to whatever meeting she would set up. After she left, I called my actual bank's customer service line. No one had tried to access my account. There had been no suspicious activity. No one from the bank had called Sarah about anything. I hung up and stared at the piece of paper she would given me. Tomorrow morning, if I would followed her instructions, I would have shown up at a bank where I wasn't a customer, possibly to meet with people pretending to be bank officials, possibly to sign documents I didn't understand. I thought about how scared I would have been if I would actually believed her story. How grateful I would have felt to have my daughter there to help me navigate a crisis I couldn't understand. How easy it would have been for someone in that emotional state to sign whatever was put in front of them. That is when I realized they weren't just trying to steal from me. They were trying to break me down psychologically, to make me so confused and frightened that I would be grateful to let them take control. But I wasn't confused, and I wasn't frightened. I was furious. The next morning, instead of going to the fake bank meeting, I went to the police station. I brought copies of the forged applications, documentation of the false medical claims, and evidence of the attempted financial manipulation. I filed a formal complaint for elder abuse and fraud. Detective Maria Santos, who specialized in financial crimes against seniors, reviewed my documentation with the thoroughness I would expect from a professional. "Mrs. Sullivan, this is a clear pattern of elder financial abuse. The forged signatures alone are felony charges. But I have to ask, are you sure you want to pursue this? These are your children. These are people who are trying to steal my home and my independence," I replied. "The fact that they are my children makes it worse, not better." She nodded. "Fair enough. We will start with an investigation. In the meantime, I would recommend getting a protective order to prevent them from accessing any more of your personal information or property." I left the police station feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time since this nightmare began, I was the one taking action instead of just reacting to their manipulations. But I wasn't done. I had one more stop to make. I drove to Michael's office building downtown, took the elevator to the 15th floor, and walked into the reception area of Hartwell and Associates Financial Planning. Michael worked as a junior associate for this firm, helping wealthy clients manage their investment portfolios. "I would like to see Michael Sullivan," I told the receptionist. "Do you have an appointment?" "I am his mother," I said. "It is a family matter," she buzzed him. And a few minutes later, Michael appeared in the lobby looking confused and slightly panicked. "Mom, what are you doing here? Is everything okay?" "I need to speak with you privately," I said. He led me to a small conference room and closed the door. "What is going on? You are scaring me." I pulled out a folder and set it on the table between us. "I know what you have been doing." His face went pale. "What do you mean? The forged applications, the fake medical appointments, the lies about my mental state, the plan to sell my house and split the proceeds." I opened the folder and showed him copies of everything I would documented. "I know all of it." Michael stared at the papers without speaking. "I filed a police report this morning," I continued. "Elder financial abuse and fraud, felony charges." "Mom, please," he said, his voice cracking. "It is not what you think. We were just trying to help you. We were worried about your safety. You were worried about your inheritance," I corrected. "You thought I was too old and too stupid to notice what you were doing." He put his head in his hands. "We weren't trying to hurt you. We just thought Sarah said you were getting forgetful, and we didn't want you to lose everything to scams or bad decisions, so you decided to scam me yourselves? No, we were going to make sure you were taken care of. The money from the house would have gone into a trust for your care." I leaned back in my chair and studied my son, this man I would raised and educated and loved, who was now lying to my face with the same casual ease he would inherited from his sister. "Michael," I said quietly, "do you know what I do every morning?" He looked up, confused by the change of subject. "I review my investment portfolio, the one you and Sarah don't know about, the one that is currently worth about $2 million. I watched his face change as the number sank in. "I track my monthly expenses, which average about $3,000. I pay my bills online, I manage my tax planning, and I make strategic decisions about asset allocation and risk management." Michael's mouth fell open. "I have been doing this for 4 years. Ever since your father died. I am not confused, Michael. I am not forgetful. I am not vulnerable to scams, because I understand money better than you do." I stood up. "What I am is disappointed. Profoundly disappointed that my own children thought they could manipulate and rob me because they assumed I was too old to fight back." I walked toward the door, then stopped. "Oh, and Michael, you might want to update your R-sum. When your employer finds out you have been arrested for elder financial abuse, I don't think they will be keeping you on staff." I left him sitting in that conference room and drove home feeling better than I had in months. But the feeling didn't last long. When I pulled into my driveway, Sarah's car was there, and she was standing on my front porch with a police officer. My heart raced as I got out of my car. Had they somehow turned this around on me? Were they having me arrested for filing a false report? But as I got closer, I could see that Sarah was crying, and the officer looked uncomfortable rather than authoritative. "Mrs. Sullivan?" the officer called as I approached. "I am Officer Bradley. Your daughter asked me to do a welfare check on you. She says she has been unable to reach you and was concerned for your safety." I looked at Sarah, who was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue and looking genuinely distressed. The performance was remarkable. "I am fine," I said to Officer Bradley, "as you can see." "Mom, where have you been?" Sarah asked. "You missed your appointment this morning, and when I came by to check on you, your car was gone." I was terrified something had happened. "What appointment?" I asked. "The one at the bank, remember, about the identity theft concerns." Officer Bradley looked between us, clearly trying to piece together what was happening. "There was no appointment at the bank," I said calmly. "There was no identity theft, and there is no welfare concern. My daughter has been trying to gain access to my financial accounts without my permission, and when I filed a police report about it this morning, she apparently decided to escalate the situation." Sarah's face changed immediately. The tears stopped, and her expression hardened. "Mom, you are not making sense. You are clearly confused." "Officer Bradley," I said, "my daughter and son have been forging documents to try to have me declared incompetent, so they can take control of my assets. I filed a formal complaint this morning with Detective Santos. You can verify that with her if you would like." The officer's expression shifted as he realized he had been pulled into a family dispute that was much more complicated than a simple welfare check. "Mrs. Sullivan appears to be fine," he said to Sarah. "If you have concerns about elder abuse, you can file a report with social services. But there is no emergency here." After he left, Sarah and I stood facing each other on my front porch. "You have ruined everything," she said. "All pretense of concern gone." "We were trying to protect you. You were trying to steal from me," I replied. "There is a difference. You are going to end up alone and broke," she said. "And when you do, don't come crying to us." "I will not," I assured her, "because I am not alone, and I am not broke. But you and Michael might be both, depending on how the criminal charges go." She stormed off my porch and drove away, tires squealing. I went inside, made myself a cup of tea, and called Janet Morrison to update her on the day's events. "They are panicking," she said. "Good. Panic makes people sloppy, and sloppy people make mistakes that are easier to prosecute." "What happens next?" I asked. "Next, we wait for them to make their next move," Janet said. "Because they will. People like this don't just give up when they are caught. They double down." She was right. They doubled down the very next day. I was having breakfast when my doorbell rang. It was a man in a suit carrying an official-looking folder. "Margaret Sullivan?" he asked. "Yes, I am here to serve you with a court order for a competency evaluation. You have been petitioned for guardianship by your children, who allege that you are no longer capable of managing your affairs independently." I took the papers with steady hands, thanked him, and closed the door. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and read through the petition Sarah and Michael had filed. According to the document, I was suffering from progressive cognitive decline that made me vulnerable to financial exploitation and unable to make sound decisions regarding my health and safety. They cited the missed doctor's appointment, the confusion about my banking, and my erratic behavior in recent weeks. They were asking the court to appoint them as my legal guardians, with full authority over my medical, financial, and residential decisions. If they won, they would have everything they had been trying to get through manipulation and fraud, but with legal authority to back it up. I called Janet immediately. "This is what I was afraid of," she said. After I read her the petition, "They are trying to use the legal system to accomplish what they couldn't do illegally. But don't worry, we are going to fight this, and we are going to win." "How can you be sure?" "Because competency evaluations are based on evidence, not allegations. And you have 40 years of evidence that you are financially sophisticated and mentally sharp. Plus, now we have their own criminal behavior on record, which is going to make their motives very clear to the judge." The court hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I spent those 2 weeks gathering documentation of my competence, including recent tax returns, investment statements, medical records, and character references from my doctor, my accountant, and several longtime friends. I also spent time thinking about what I would say if given the chance to speak to the judge, because I realized that this hearing wasn't just about my money, or my house, or my independence. It was about something more fundamental. It was about the assumption that getting older means getting weaker, getting confused, getting irrelevant. It was about the idea that adult children have the right to make decisions for their parents based on nothing more than age and convenience. And I was going to prove them wrong. The day of the hearing, I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit and low heels. I carried a briefcase with all my documentation, and I walked into that courtroom like the competent adult I would always been. Sarah and Michael were there with their lawyer, sitting at the petitioner's table looking confident and sympathetic. Sarah wore a simple black dress and looked appropriately worried about her poor, declining mother. But when the judge called the hearing to order and asked for evidence of my alleged incompetence, their case started falling apart immediately. Their lawyer presented the missed doctor's appointment, which I was able to prove had never been scheduled. He mentioned my confusion about banking, which I countered with detailed printouts of my financial management over the past 5 years. He brought up my erratic behavior, by which he apparently meant my decision to file criminal charges against my children for forging documents and attempting financial fraud. When it was our turn, Janet methodically presented evidence of my mental acuity, my financial sophistication, and my complete independence in managing all aspects of my life. But the turning point came when the judge asked me directly about my relationship with my children. "Mrs. Sullivan, your children claim they are concerned about your welfare. Can you explain why you believe their motives are not pure?" I stood up and looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor, my children have spent the last 6 months systematically trying to convince me and everyone around me that I am incompetent. They have forged my signature on legal documents. They have lied about my medical condition. They have attempted to access my financial accounts without permission. And they have done all of this while pretending to be concerned about my welfare." I paused and glanced at Sarah and Michael, who were both staring at the table. But here's what they didn't know. I have been watching them the entire time. I have been documenting their lies and their manipulations. And I have been managing my affairs with complete competence throughout this entire ordeal. I turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, I am not a vulnerable old woman who needs to be protected from her own decisions. I am an intelligent adult who needs to be protected from people who would exploit me, even if those people are my own children." The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked both lawyers to approach the bench for a whispered conversation that lasted several minutes. When they returned to their seats, the judge addressed the courtroom. "I have reviewed all the evidence presented today, and I find no credible proof that Mrs. Sullivan is incompetent to manage her affairs. The petition for guardianship is denied." He looked directly at Sarah and Michael. "Furthermore, I am troubled by the allegations of document forgery and financial manipulation. I am ordering the court clerk to forward a copy of these proceedings to the district attorney's office for review." I felt something lift off my chest that I hadn't even realized was weighing me down. But the judge wasn't finished. "Mrs. Sullivan, I am also going to issue a protective order prohibiting the petitioners from accessing any of your financial accounts, medical information, or personal property without your written consent. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest." Outside the courthouse, Sarah and Michael approached me one last time. "Mom, please," Michael said. "Cannot we work this out as a family?" I looked at both of them. These people I would raised and loved and sacrificed for, who had been willing to have me declared incompetent to get access to my money. "We are not a family," I said quietly. "A family doesn't prey on its weakest members. A family doesn't lie and steal and manipulate. You are strangers to me now, strangers who happen to share my DNA." Sarah started to protest, but I held up a hand. "I am 67 years old," I said. "I don't know how many good years I have left, but however many there are, I am not going to spend them with people who see me as a problem to be solved or an asset to be liquidated." I walked away and didn't look back. That evening, I sat in my living room with a glass of wine and called Janet Morrison to thank her for everything she would done. "You did the hard part," she said. "Standing up to family takes more courage than standing up to strangers." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you live your life," she said, "on your own terms." And that is exactly what I did. I kept my house, which I love and which holds 40 years of memories. I maintained my financial independence and my investment portfolio, which continued to grow steadily under my careful management. I also made some new choices. I started volunteering with an organization that helps other seniors who are victims of financial abuse. I joined a book club and a hiking group. I traveled to places I would always wanted to see, but had never made time for. And I discovered something interesting. Without the constant stress of being manipulated and undermined by my own children, my mind became sharper, my energy increased, and my confidence soared. 6 months after the court hearing, I received a letter from Michael. He would lost his job just as I would predicted when his employer learned about the criminal charges. He was facing significant legal fees and possible jail time. The letter was a request for financial assistance. I read it once, then put it in the shredder. A few weeks later, Sarah called and left a voicemail. She was getting divorced, she said, and was struggling to make ends meet. She wondered if we could put the past behind us and rebuild our relationship. I deleted the message without responding. I don't feel guilty about cutting them out of my life. I feel free. I spent my whole adult life putting my children's needs before my own, making sacrifices so they could have opportunities, giving them love and support even when they didn't deserve it. I thought that was what good mothers do. But I learned something important from this experience. Good mothers don't enable their children to become predators. Good mothers don't sacrifice their own dignity and security to make their adult children's lives easier. And good mothers certainly don't reward their children for treating them like prey. The criminal case against Sarah and Michael is still pending. Detective Santos tells me they will likely accept plea deals that include restitution and community service, but probably no jail time for first offenders. I am fine with that. I never wanted to destroy them. I just wanted them to stop trying to destroy me. These days, I wake up every morning in my own house, check my investment portfolio over coffee, and make plans for a day that belongs entirely to me. I have friends who respect me, activities that challenge me, and a future that I control completely. I am 67 years old, and I have never been more powerful in my life. Because power isn't about what you can take from others. It is about what you refuse to let others take from you. And I refuse to let anyone, family or otherwise, take my independence, my dignity, or my right to live my remaining years on my own terms. The people who love you don't try to convince the world that you are incompetent. They don't forge your signature or lie about your medical condition or plot to sell your home out from under you. The people who love you celebrate your strength, not exploit your vulnerabilities. And if the people in your life are doing anything else, then maybe it is time to ask yourself why you are trying so hard to keep them there. After all, you are never too old to choose yourself, you are never too old to fight back, and you are never too old to build a life worth living, even if you have to build it without the people you once thought would be part of it forever. Trust me on this one. I know what I am talking about. Let me know in the comments what you think about my situation. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who didn't have your best interests at heart? How did you handle it? And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding your strength when life gets complicated.